So the other thing I was talking about in the previous post uh, the other day was making the mobius with the open ends. Is because what I'm trying to do is create a surface that can match this, and something that's basically closer to unwrappable. Um, and I say that I was just going to illustrate this by saying, okay, if I take, so here's the way I made the Mobius. I did this, and I swept that, and then I take this one and this one, and I sweep it. And then, so I did that, and I chose a triangle with 60-degree edges. I found a guy online doing it, and the 6 degrees I just know has a lot to do with trig and all that. So I think it allows us to keep the actual shape with the curling and the bending and the twisting closest to what would be a rectangle up here, as opposed to what I was trying to explain was I just enabled the update. So if I now take my 60-degree edges and I flatten that one, and then I come back to this one and flatten this one. And so what it does, it allows me to look at what's really happening to the metal with the Mobius strip, with the flat edges. This is Moy allowing me to see it. It's one of the limitations here in the CAD modeling, because although these two lines are both 4.525, right? 4.525. When you sweep them around the circle and it twists and conforms the NURB surface, it's actually, it doesn't remain that exact distance all the way through. Michael can speak to that. What I think that's him talking about. If we took this line and we arrayed it around this curve, you know, 300 times, and just did 300 degrees of rotation to get from 90 to 90, or from 0 to 90, or whatever, from 0 to 90, we could probably sweep all those profiles through each other, and then the surface would be forced to conform. That's as far as I could get. But really, if you look at it though, look at the difference. You know what I mean? It's if you look, we can look straight down, and this was me talking. See how it's no longer a tangent edge? It's curling in, and this is basically that same distance. In that I just showed you the previous video of when we did this to this flow over here. It ended up, it didn't curve like that to match and meet. We weren't doing this flow over here saying I want the two edges to match and glue up, which is what you're trying to do in the real world. And so that's why I was saying uh, modeling the Mobius first and then trying to unwrap it doesn't really work, because it unwraps it into this kind of a shape right here, right? It needs, you're trying to stretch. What you want to do is model everything on the flat, and then figure out what you need to do to cut differently. So that was just when I created the first one. So now if I try to unwrap these edges and everything, it's going to be a lot more intense for me to figure out what what would happen is if I take this curve and this curve, right? These two curves, which are in the unwrap, it became this one. Let me join these so it comes up. Join, and this one. And so when I unwrapped the previous model with the 60 degrees, these were the two curves I unwrapped that flattened out just fine, right? And then I connected the end with just a straight line because I modeled it that way. Now, in theory, there's a little bit of curvature, because if I take these now, this curve right here, oh, this one and this one, and I unwrap it, and then I take the other ones, this line right here isn't really a 60-degree edge, like that's what created that, or it's not this edge here. It's actually more an edge that will look like this if you use wrapping software to unwrap it. Oop, where's my arm? That's more what the edge of your metal would look like unwrapped. You see that? And so you would have to pre-make your metal like that, so that when you started bending and stretching and curving, that would turn out to be a straight line that met up with each other. Does that make sense? Otherwise, if you do the straight line one, you're going to get some type of overlap or gap. If you do too much of you could do too much of a curve and then bend it and get it into shape, and then just do a single cut through both of them, and then have a nice, beautiful edge to weld together. But this way, doing the unwrap to actually get a surface that you can put text on and then flow back to an actual mobius is going to be extremely difficult, and really dive into it. I did it this other way because I could generate this surface right here, which would allow me to do the two flows, which is flow it into a curve, which then gave me a surface which I could cut the ends off of. You see this end? That's why you see these up here, is if I flow, so I had two surfaces here. Let me back up a little. There you go. So now following the flow I did before got you this. If I tried to cut this in half now, right, and then flow this half and all of this text onto here, it would distort. But that's because these distorted ends aren't matching up to this over here. So how do I cut out that end? I came to the end and I cut out that little curve that I was just explaining about over here. It's basically, I just remade, if I had the metal, I just cut a line between the two curved end pieces and made a nice edge and then I swept. I did a sweep between this and these two curves here, and I made this new surface, which then now matches. See the beautiful shape in those points versus, look at the points in this. So you can't flow your text from this surface, but I flowed my text from this surface over to this surface, which had see how the points match up? It's flow to flow, not flow here, right? To flow here. That would come up with all the distortions you're talking about. And see how it starts, see how your points start twisting over here? See that twist and that roll to meet up? So I just used the geometry to get a beautiful surface that I can flow, match, and meet up. And I had it meet up at the inner edge tip, and then I cut out all that curvature and stretch and shrinkage, which, that's what I was telling you. And I posted a link to a software called Lamina, and Lamina actually lets you get cutout shapes. So you can take your Mobius and you would put it in there, and you have to learn how to use that software. But what it will do is actually create cut up shapes that actually take your double curvature thing that Michael was talking about, that double redundancy curvature, and it will allow you to put it into flat shapes. And you actually can even do manual cutting up, and that way you can get paper that can be bent and cover all the different directions of the stretching and shaping, and make a curve like a Mobius. Anyway, enough talking.